Oh, hi guys, that's Rice here, and today I'll be going through creating a BMI calculator app on Anvil, which is a website. So, so if you didn't know, from my previous lesson, Anvil.works is a website that allows you to build web apps using nothing but Python. So today we'll be going through how to do so. So go ahead and click on the top right, the Start Building button, and then we're going to click a new blank app and select material design. The rest of the templates are if you want to build more complicated looking apps. So yeah, so from my previous lesson, I already went through the main structure of Anvil. So go ahead and watch my counter app if you have not, to understand the basics of Anvil. And in this video, we'll be going through a BMI calculator. So if you remember from the other Python exercise, we built a BMI calculator using the console, meaning this one, when you press run, you enter your height and weight in the console, and then they'll print it out in plain text and with a black background. So that wasn't a website, that was a Python console. But today we'll be bringing this logic from the BMI calculator exercise into a website to make it nicer. So once again, the slides are available on in the link description below on my website. And yeah, in this video, I'll mainly be going through the development live instead of using the slides. So yeah, so without further ado, let's try to get started. So we can click this app browser to minimize the thing on the left. I won't go through into much details um, because the previous video more or less covered it. So drag and drop a rich text over, and you can write and you can edit. This is my BMI calculator app. Okay, then once again, you can drag and drop the link that you want to the top right over here if you want, but let's not do that for this video. So we're gonna need two input fields, and the input field will be this one. So this is a text box that we can drag and drop. Let's drag and drop one here, and we're going to add a second one below it. Okay, so for the first one, we're going to call it the height. So the placeholder text should be, please enter your height in I think it's meters. And for the other one, it's going to be the placeholder text under the properties is going to be, please enter your weight in kg. Okay, and we're going to also need to rename the attribute. So we're going to rename these text boxes. So under the name section, under properties, the name, instead of text box 1, let's change it to text box. Let's change it to text height. And for the weight one, let's change it to text underscore weight. Okay, so now we have these two fields, and the next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to add a button below these. So let's choose the fifth one over here, drag and drop it over to here underneath the two input fields. And over here, we're going to name it button 1. We just can leave it as button 1. And I will scroll down over to the text area. Let's call it calculate BMI. Okay, and after that, we can handle the click by pressing this. To add an on-click handler, we press this blue button beside the click event, and we see that in the code, there's a function that popped up saying button 1 click, and at the moment is empty. Okay, so then the next thing we're going to need to do is to add an answer text display. So we type in our height in meters here, we type in our weight in kg here, and then we click the button. We're going to need a way to display the BMI. So to do so, we can use a text field. So you can drop a text label over here, and let's call it label underscore answer. So go over to the name section of the properties and change the label one to label underscore answer. Then in the text, you can say, press button to calculate BMI. Okay. Then now we're ready to write the code to handle the calculation logic. So go over to the code section, and under the function button one click, right, and we zoom in a little bit. Under this function, we're going to delete this pass, right, and the code we're going to write is going to have this indentation over here. It's important to have the spacing to tell Python that the code we write is under this function. So the code that we're going to write is actually going to be, I can just bring it over here. You can go ahead and pause the video and to stare at it. But for me, I'm going to write it out live. So yeah, so I'm going to bring this away and type it out live. So we create a variable that's called height, and we assign it the value of whatever is in the text box. And to assess what is in the text box, we use this variable. We access this variable, and we use the float to convert what's in the text box into a float type, because by default, the text is a string. So then after that, we type weight equals the float self.text. And once again, this is similar to the step above, just that instead of height, we use weight. Then lastly, we have the height and weight stored in the variables height and weight. And to calculate the BMI, we can create a new variable called BMI equals to weight divided by height squared. So this is in fact identical to the format, the console, the Python program that we wrote in the previous exercise. And lastly, to print it out, instead of writing print BMI, which we'll do usually if it's a Python console, instead of doing that, we set the answer label to equals to a string, a formatted string saying your BMI is colon BMI. And without further ado, let's go ahead and try to run it. Hopefully we won't have any errors. Details, so give our app a name. Let's call it BMI calculator. Here. Okay, so rename it to that. When we press run, okay, so details to enter our height in meters. So that let's just say this person is 1 meter, and the details to enter our weight in kg. So let's just say the person is 5 kg, and then we press calculate BMI, and we see that in fact it has calculated our BMI. Okay, so if you're only familiar with variables at this moment, then you can go ahead and end the video here. But let's go a bit further and actually add some additional code to tell the person if he is underweight, overweight, or obese, or normal. Okay, so this will be using the knowledge from my second lesson, which is on conditionals. So if you haven't watched that, please go ahead and watch that video. So so let's build a BMI calculator at Pro, where instead of calculating the BMI, we also tell them if they are underweight or overweight. You can also add some advice in the app if you want. So okay, so we're going to need to add an additional message text field, and to do so is just drag and drop. Just dragging over an additional text field, right? So this one is another text label. We put it under the under the BMI display. So let's go ahead and name that label underscore message, right? So that our Python code can access it later. So this is the BMI chart. So we'll be using these values to calculate. Let's do the first 4 classes. Okay, so yeah, so this is the code that we're gonna add. If you are watching the video, please go ahead and pause it and copy it over. And yeah, so now I'm going to bring it off screen so that I can type it. Okay, so we're going to go over to the code section. And here, So if the BMI is, so the conditional will use the variable BMI. So if the BMI is less than 18.5, then we're going to set the label message text equals to you are underweight. And then if the, so otherwise, else if, right, BMI less than 24.9, then the label, the message is going to be your normal weight. Otherwise, the message, if the BMI is less than 29.9, then the message is going to be you are overweight. And lastly, if it's still above all of these, then the message is going to be you are obese. Okay, so you may see that, hey, you may have a question right now, which is that don't we need to check if it's within the range of 18.5 to 24.9? And over here, we seem to have only checked the upper bound, which is that if the BMI is less than 24.9. So are we missing out this thing? And the answer is in the structure of the if-else statements. So because we use the airlift, we chain the airlift together, it means that for the first class, right, which is underweight, if the BMI is less than 18.5, then in fact it is underweight. So the first class is okay. Then you think about what happens, if you think about what happens in the next line, if the BMI was within this range between 18.5 and 24.9, then the first if statement will not be true. So you'll skip to the next one, to line 20. And at line 20, it will hold true if it's within this range, 18.5 to 24.9. Then it'll be normal weight. Yeah, so the question of if we are we just checking one bound over here, right? The question of are we just checking one bound over here and missing out the other bound is a good question, but the answer to that is that the checking of the other bound happens in the previous if statement. So only if the first if statement failed, then it'll go on to the second if statement. So if the thing was below 18.5, then it'll never even reach line 20 in the first place, and so on for the rest. So even though it looks like we're just checking one bound, right, the upper bound, but in fact, due to the structure of the if-else statements, if one of them, we're going from a top-down approach, so we're going sequentially from top down. So if one of them was true, then the rest of the if statements would not even be evaluated. It'll be skipped over due to elif being, due to the else if. So yeah, I hope that you understand what I mean. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment in the description below. So without enough of my blabbering, let's press run. And we type in 1 and 1. So our BMI is 1, we are underweight. And if our weight was insanely high, then we are obese. And anywhere in between, I think it's 18.6, then we are normal weight, or if it's around 20, then we are normal weight still. If it's 26, then we are overweight. Okay, so yeah, I hope that you understand this chain of if-else commands, of elif commands, the logic over here. And if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. If not, that's all I have for today. Have a nice day. Bye.